Hello, and welcome. This is a battle report for the Fallout Wasteland Warfare tabletop game. Today's game is using a quick exit scenario from the Astoundingly Awesome Tales expansion. Today's map is based inside a vault. After hours and hours of 3D printing and painting, it's exciting to finally get this massive layout laid out on the table. On the survivor side, the force list for the scenario is very interesting. You can only pick one unit, and then have 6 items, all fitting within a 150 caps limit. However, the unit doesn't start out with all this gear. They actually don't start out with any of it. It has to be picked up during the scenario, which is why there are 2 pistols and 2 melee weapons. I wanted to be sure that I would definitely get at least one weapon if I got to half of the items. I chose Sturges as my single model because I realized that he's kind of a beast. 7 HP backed up by 2 physical and energy armor, 6 skill with melee weapons and with his specialty 44 revolver, 8 skill for all expertise checks. It's a pretty nice setup. For his gear, I picked items that would make sense for him to have collected inside the vault. My extra narrative for the scenario is that he's been living in this vault for a while, but has decided to break out. He also wants to snag one of his side projects on the way out, a newly restored power armor frame. To resolve his modder ability, I created a deck of all the mods which could be attached to the items he is carrying, and drew 3. I didn't attach them, but decided that when he draws an item from the wasteland, if it can get a mod, I can then decide which, if any of these mods, I want to attach to it. On the Vault Dweller side, there are 2 security officers equipped with combat shotguns and batons, and a single Vault Dweller with a 10mm pistol. The goal of the scenario is that Sturges has to escape out of the vault's entrance after having collected at least 2 items from the tokens strewn across the level. The Vault Dwellers just need to stop him. However, they aren't deployed at the start of the scenario. They will spawn one at a time at the end of each game round until they're all on the board. In my narrative styling, I imagine that Sturges has triggered an alarm in the vault, making the dwellers think he's escaped already, forcing them to chase after him. However, this is just a distraction to give him enough time to gear up before his actual escape. So turn 1 starts with Sturges hopping out of bed. He rushes forward and grabs a Nuka-Cola. Turn 1 ends quickly, and the first Vault Security Officer arrives. At the start of turn 2, some rugged rubble comes loose, and a mole rat startles the Vault Security Officer to jump further into the vault. Sturges heads back to the cafeteria and uncovers a 44 revolver. Nice. That's the weapon he has a specialty with, so it's a particularly good draw. Also, being armed at all is a big step forward. Having retrieved 2 items, Sturges is now also allowed to escape the vault and win the scenario. It's not a difficult objective to accomplish, but it prevents the escapee from just sprinting to the exit in turn 1. With a couple different routes for the officer to possibly take, I took the easy approach and just rolled some dice to decide, so they head towards the cafeteria via the utility room. At the end of turn 2, the Vault Dweller arrives. To start out turn 3, a siren starts going off inside the vault, making it very difficult to focus. No prepare actions allowed at all, so that might be a factor. With the Vault Security Officer approaching via the utility room, Sturges backtracks a bit, heading towards the office space to try to snag some more gear. The security officer moves through the utility and storage areas and ends up in the cafeteria. The officer can see Sturges, but I decided at the beginning of the scenario that since this is a still functional vault, the glass would still be in the windows, so it would prevent firing through them. The officer can at least shout angry demands at Sturges, though. The Vault Dweller pushes up as well, and is engagement range with Sturges, but doesn't have any actions left to act on that. At the end of turn 3, the final Vault Security Officer arrives. The event for turn 4 is distant gunfire. The siren has receded, and thus there are no gameplay effects to take into account. Sturges takes a point-blank shot with his 44 revolver, breaking the dweller's single point of armor and knocking 2 damage through. He also gets a quick action, which he uses to prepare. Instead of taking a follow-up shot, Sturges moves back towards the offices. There are some angry officers coming up quickly, and he doesn't want to get surrounded here. The newly arrived security officer goes first, and moves up just behind the dweller. The Dweller fires off a shot with her 10mm, but even with a -2 rolled, a total of 4 is still not enough to be a hit. Sturges uses his reaction to fire back. I gave the Vault Dweller cover due to the corner, but it didn't matter. Sturges' second shot is also a bullseye and drops the Vault Dweller. The other Vault Security officer moves up. If Sturges hadn't moved into the office door, then he definitely would have caught a shot after the officer's first move, so moving here was a good option to reduce incoming fire. Turn 4 ends with the Vault Dweller down, but the officers closing the trap around Sturges. "Stop resisting!" they shout. The event for turn 5 is an eerie quiet that falls through the vault. No -2 penalties for reactions this turn. This could also be a big factor in the turn, so we'll have to see. Since it worked out so well last turn, Sturges starts out this turn by taking a pot shot. He hits the security officer and generates a prepared token via the earned action point. However, the officer's armor blocks all the damage. Sturges then pops through the door into the office and uncovers his power armor frame. This is a great item to get, because it pushes his strength above 7, so he gets an additional black die when attacking in melee now. He doesn't have a specific melee weapon yet, but it's still good to have. The officer moves up after Sturges, and stays behind cover with the shelves. Sturges uses his prepare token to take the shot regardless, and nails it again. 3 damage breaks through the officer's armor. The second officer couldn't make it into the office to attack, so they move up and prepare in case Sturges decides to make a break for it. Turn 6 starts, and the event is a lucky find. Sturges gets the draw and pulls a pipe wrench off a nearby shelf. Considering his latest upgrade with the power armor, now he's pretty fully kitted out. Sturges decides to charge the officer, since with the charge bonus he gets to roll 2 black and 1 yellow die. He gets no actual bonuses from the dice, but the natural 2 damage is enough to knock the officer out. I forgot to snag a photo of this, but I decided to have Sturges chug his Nuka-Cola to gain an action point to prepare for the inevitable countercharge from the remaining officer. As expected, the officer charges in and takes a point-blank prepared shot in reaction. Another hit gets in, and another 2 damage gets through. The officer does get to make their attack, and hits, but the 2 damage is blocked by Sturges' armor. I guess there are enough tools stashed in his overalls that it provides a protective cocoon. Turn 7 kicks off with some extra gear becoming unveiled. I guess Sturges' shot from earlier had a ricochet that knocked a crate open. Since there's only 1 model per side now, initiative switches sides, so the Vault Security officer gets to go first. They take a shot with their combat shotgun, hitting and gaining a prepared token via the action point rolled. No extra damage rolled, and Sturges blocks 1 with armor, so only 1 gets through. Their second shot is a near miss though. Only having a rifle skill of 4 definitely hurts their offensive capabilities. Sturges decides to charge in. This does trigger the officer's prepared action, and they take a swat with their baton. Normally, a 9 wouldn't be anywhere near a hit, but with an incredible -5 rolled on the effect dice, a result of 4 is just enough. Sturges blocks 1 point of damage again, and takes 1 through. His fully charged up charge attack ends on a big whiff. Then he shifts around the officer to be closer to the exit. Turn 8 rolls around, and the damp air event is drawn. Technically this can't happen, since the green die has no blank faces, but if I recall correctly, the errata is that minuses on the green die affect just 1 more, for now. Hopefully it doesn't come up, so I don't have to check the documents. As the turn flips around, so does the initiative. Sturges gets another thump in, and the officer blocks 1 damage with armor, so 1 more gets through. The second swing is a critical hit. Breaking all of the officer's armor means that both points of damage get through, and drops them. With the Vault Security forces defeated, Sturges casually strolls out of the vault, ready to make his way in the wasteland. Well, this was a pretty straightforward victory. When Sturges nails basically all of his attacks, and his armor tanks a ton of damage, it's a breeze. Though I had kind of hoped for this sort of result. His stats are fairly impressive to start, and if you can boost him up, like with the weapon mods and the power armor frame, he really becomes a monster. It was also a big help that I drew his 44 revolver weapon before he had a chance to engage with the enemies. I think, for this scenario, it's tempting to throw a bunch of gear options in the mix, but if you're playing to win, you need to push the balance heavily on weapons. Otherwise, a few unlucky draws could have you coming up against combat shotguns with nothing but an unarmed attack. Either way, it was a fun scenario, and it was great to finally get the full vault layout on the table. Hopefully you enjoyed this report, because the follow-up to it is coming soon. Stay safe out there in the wasteland.